the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good afternoon, welcome to NUFC Manners with me, Steve Wraith. Thursday, and it is Supermac and Gibbo that join me. Good afternoon, chaps.
Hi, boys.
Hi, John.
Hi, my friend.
Great to see you guys, as always, an hour to chat to your good selves about Newcastle United. And people in the chat, got any questions, send them over. We'll do our best to give our answer or critique on them. And Malcolm, another win. Game of two halves, proverbial game of two halves last week. Newcastle against Southampton. Always difficult when you're playing these teams at the bottom of the division. You sometimes think that, it's going to be an easy game. We're going to win 5 or 6-0 and do the business like we did against Tottenham. But unfortunately, that wasn't the way it was going to go in the first half.
No, I did say before the game that they really do play some lovely football, Southampton. It's just that they struggle to score goals. And that's pretty much what happened in the first half. That they really, I thought they played ever so well. Newcastle, they just didn't look right. But moving on to the second half, the beauty about Newcastle right now is that they can be playing pretty poorly, but they can still score goals. And it's so important for a side, because you can't be really good every week. But if you can be a threat, a danger by scoring goals, then all of a sudden you can turn the tide. And that's exactly what they did. Goals change games. And that's how Newcastle are changing their games at the moment. And well done to them. You could have maybe thought there might be a bit of a panic coming on the second half with being a goal down, but they didn't. They just kept playing. I really do have a lot of confidence and faith in this side, and they don't have to play well to win, and that's a great thing.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the game turned completely in what we who were sitting in the press room was talking about, and that is that it hadn't worked for Anthony Gordon, so it was time to bring him off. I mean, I felt that, what was said about Isak early on when Eddie was explaining why Isak wasn't starting, and he said, well, he might be up to speed for ordinary teams, but the way we play with the high pressing, the ultra fitness, trying to do the pace is not up to speed yet. I felt that's the situation with Gordon, who of course has just arrived. I don't think he's up to Newcastle United pace yet. He can't press, he can't do. I mean, I thought he looked quite weak on the ball. He got bullied on the ball a little bit.
Yeah, he did.
And I felt that the change in the whole thing, and I was sitting with Malcolm and I was talking to one of the press lads, Craig Hope of the Daily Mail, and we all said before half time, take Anthony off at half time. And Hope, he said to me, well, what will you do? And you can bring a winger on. I said, well, really, bring Wilson on and put Isak on the wing. And for me, that changed it, because Wilson was the orthodox centre forward. He played it that way. If you think about it, he scored 2. He had another ruled for fractional offside, and he hit the bar. And that was only 45 minutes work, not 90 minutes work. And so it changed the whole thing. I would say, though, because I would like to put it on record, that as far as Anthony Gordon's concerned, I know he's taken a bit of a bashing in social media, and there's people, only a minority, but quite vocal, that are writing him off and saying he won't do it at Newcastle. I just say, hold your fire. Give the lad time. He's only 22. That was only his 3rd start, because he got involved with the League Cup where he was League Cup type. and he isn't up to speed yet. Let's remember about Isak when he wasn't up to speed. Let's remember what tune Eddie Howe got out of people that were tone deaf, like Meeran and Joe Linton and Sean Longstaff. He's transformed Sean Longstaff, transformed Jacob Murphy. So I've got a feeling that he'll do that with Anthony Gordon. We may have to wait till next season to see it, but that's okay. There's only about 5 matches left at this stage. But I don't believe the guy will start on Sunday. I actually hope he doesn't, because in his current situation, he's not up to speed for me. But I'm not going to write him off yet. Long term, I think he's got a chance of coming. You could have easily written Almiron off originally. You could have easily written Joe Linton off when he was
a lot did.
Yes,
a lot did, John.
And rightly so. But and Sean Longstaff was on a dip, and look how he's becoming an essential part of the team, not the squad. Jacob Murphy, out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday in some other club for a couple of seasons. No future here. All of a sudden, a regular starter at the moment. So players can be transformed, and I think Anthony Gordon hopefully will be, because certainly he's got a manager that's got stardust in his back pocket, and if he decides to bring it out and sprinkle it on Gordon, he'll be okay.
Yeah. I would agree entirely, John, with what you've said. That with Gordon, I think what we've got to remember also is that he spent over 3/4 of a season at a side that is absolutely awful, and so the fitness level drops significantly, and it takes a long while to get it back. Plus, Eddie Howe is demanding a bit more.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Malcolm.
Yeah.
And he looks to me, when you watch him closely, to be well short of that fitness level.
Yes, well short. Well short. Yeah. It'll take time, but he'll get there. You know, I think he's very athletic, so he will get there in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got no doubt in that as well. I've got faith in Anthony Gordon. I think he'll do well, and he gets a summer under the management and coaching of Eddie and the boys.
Yeah,
I think he'll do well.
I think he could do with having 2 or 3 really good sessions in the weight room to build his muscle bulk up.
At the moment, he looks weak, Malcolm. At the moment,
yes, he does.
He can be pushed off the ball. You know, he can be pushed off the ball, and confidence levels as well. I mean, on another day with his confidence high, that when he was through 1-on-1 with the keeper and he hit the outside of the post, that would go in eventually.
Yes.
Once he gets to what he's going to become, that'll go in. His confidence levels aren't high because, as Malcolm said, he'd come from an Everton team struggling like heck. He'd had a bad way of leaving Everton with the fans on his back because he wanted away. Life's been tough for the kid, and he's only 22. I think at the moment he's best being used as a sub, because I don't want to see him start against Arsenal. I'm just being realistic, but I think in the long term he can become an important part of our setup.
We do like questions on here, so keep them coming in. I'll get through them as best I can. Super Ernie 90 says, afternoon, do you think Saint-Maximin will play for us again, Malcolm, or will he move on in the summer window?
Right, well, I'm on for me fish and chips.
Let me put it this way. Saint-Maximin is a hugely skillful player. Hugely skillful. There's no doubting that whatsoever. And he can be a real handful to play against. But if you look at the situation now, and I keep harping back on this, but this is the fundamental of football. How many goals have you scored? How many goals have you made? Ask the same question to Murphy. And there's 2 entirely different answers. Entirely different. And that's why Murphy is in the side, who is nowhere near the skill of Saint-Maximin. But Murphy is more direct, more positive in the way that he goes about what he does, gets into the right positions at the right time. And he's got a cracking shot in him. He's got a super ability to cross the ball. He might not have the on-the-ball skills, but Murphy, in the end, is more effective than Saint-Maximin. Saint-Maximin frustrates the life out of me because he could be so brilliant, but he isn't. And it's only him that can get himself sorted out. You know, you can maybe talk to him and help and guide him a little, but I'm not so sure that he would bother even to listen. I think he's got his own way of playing, and he wants to stick to that.
I think we'll see him before the end of the season, perhaps well off the bench, but I think he could even make the bench on Sunday in terms of fitness-wise, because he's back here from France and be playing. And there's 9 on the bench, for goodness sake, so there's room for everybody on the bench. So he could be on the bench, but just to finish it, Mal, and he could get in the team, who knows, with injury. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if the right offer comes in this summer, they'll sell him. But there's got to be a decent offer, because they're not going to give him away in terms of money. But if you get anywhere 40 million and north of that, they will sell him. And the club that was willing to do that and still feels like that is Tottenham Hotspur in terms of Levy, the owner. He fancies him strongly as a
really
crowd pleaser, etc., etc.
Yeah.
He has a great. Not only does he hold the purse strings, but he has a great influence on the manager and who comes to the club.
Yes.
Now, that tells you an awful lot, because they've got an awful lot wrong in the transfer market, Spurs, over recent seasons. And so it's not to say that they're right and we are wrong. But again, who comes in as manager? If the man that comes in as manager at Spurs says to Levy, I'm only coming in providing I've got the final say on transfers, and Levy agrees to that, then the Saint-Maximin situation can change, because the new manager mightn't fancy him. So that comes into play. But Spurs' interest in him isn't paper talk, which is what we say.
Right.
It is absolutely genuine. And the Saint-Maximin camp know of their interest in him, etc., etc., know positively of their interest in him. So it'll be interesting to see. And of course, that not only frees up a place in the squad, but financially gives Newcastle more leeway to work their money, because they've got 40, 50 million in, so that can go straight in the transfer pot for buying players on top of what's already there. So it opens that door. And it's often been said that if they could make one good outgoing transfer, it would have helped their situation. But of course, you've got to select who you're going to go. You don't want that outgoing man to be Bruno, or to be Joe Linton, or anybody of that, or to be Isak. And it won't be, because the club wouldn't want to sell them. And the only man that's likely to bring in a fee that they would let go, for me, is Maxi.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the comments, John, as you were talking. There was one there, Steve, that it said that Saint-Maximin has got much better stats. Well, there are only 2 stats that really, really matter. How many goals have you scored? How many goals have you made? Or at least for a forward, I'm talking of. And those 2 stats, they will tell everything. And Murphy makes more goals, scores more goals than Saint-Maximin. So Saint-Maximin's stats on how many times he can disappear up his own backside, it is all very well, but they're not the important stats. They're not the stats that really make a difference. They're not the stats that the teammates go, great, fabulous, that's what we want. And the teammates are doing that with Murphy. He's just what they want.
Interesting stuff. The ASM thing is going to run and run through the summer. We're
Oh, what a blow. What
Hey,
a blow. I'm taking this from off then.
That's more than he does.
Hey, dear me, oh. Don't you'll upset Trulls when Trulls comes in. Trulls is ASM's biggest fan in here. Can you see Wilson bagging 20 goals this season? He's got 5 games left to get 5 goals. Can he do it, Mal?
Yeah, yes, he can. When the ball comes in the box, he's absolutely alive, and is a terrific one-touch finisher. And he would just find any way to get that vital touch just in front of the defender on the ball. So yes, he can. He score 5 in 5? Of course he can. Yeah.
What you've got to do, though, you've got to ask Eddie if he's going to be allowed to, because there's him and Isak for centre forward. Is he going to play him? Is he going to start him in the 5? If he starts him in the 5, he can score 5 goals. If you bring him on at half time, he's got 2.5 games to get them in.
He still score 5 goals, John.
Now we're getting carried away here. Before we know where we are, we'll have Haaland centre forward for Newcastle.
I think he can do it. He can do it.
He can do it. He can. If he starts, he can do it. But if you bring him on at half time, and this isn't a go at Eddie because it's off work, and there's Isak to come into that equation as well. But if you come on at half time or something, your time is obviously very reduced for scoring 5. He can score a hat trick in a game. So yes, he can do it. There's no question about that. And if he starts, if he played all 5 games, he's got a real chance of doing it.
And this might be a Newcastle United podcast, but it's a football podcast as well, Malcolm. And I've heard of the goalkeepers union. I'm sure there used to be a strikers union. What did you make of Haaland breaking the record last night? I mean, he's been just abnormal this season, hasn't he? What a finisher!
He's a complete phenomenon. Can you imagine yourself? You're sitting in the dressing room, and the manager comes in to give the team meeting. And he says, okay, I want you to man mark Haaland. What a task. What an unbelievable task. It must be every defender's nightmare at the moment.
Well, if you remember, Malcolm, before the game with West Ham, 3 of the West Ham team, including the centre-half Zuma, went down with an illness and didn't play. Now, do you think there had been a team talk at lunchtime, and it said to Zuma, "You're the man marking Haaland," and by 2:00 in the afternoon, he had a high temperature and he was on his way back to London.
Yeah. Yeah, he's enough to frighten anybody. Is Haaland, I wonder though how many goals he would be scoring if he was sort of in a middling Premiership club. He's with probably just about the best in the country right now, and possibly one of the best 4 in Europe. And by heavens, they know how to get the ball into that danger area for him. I remember back to that when Newcastle were 3-1 ahead against Man City at St James Park earlier in the season, and Newcastle were 3-1 ahead. Manchester City for 20 minutes were absolutely, totally, completely unplayable. They just mesmerised the Newcastle side and scored 2 goals, and they got a draw out of it. And there was no way that you could have criticised Newcastle. It was just sheer, utter brilliance by Manchester City. And
mind you, for an hour, Malcolm, we mesmerised them and were
we did. We did, John.
Maxi hammered Walker.
Walker would. He was
to us as well. We
hammered him. He turned Walker into a nervous wreck.
Oh, Oh dear, oh dear. And by the way, the Haaland thing, isn't it interesting, Steve? The Haaland thing with the record last night, the record he beat, the Premier League record for goals in a season, were two of our old mates. Alan Shearer and Andy Cole
That's right.
He's the guy that took their records last night. And Shearer didn't play in a brilliant Newcastle side that were winning things, Malcolm, but he still scored a pile of goals.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Scored a pile of goals. Haaland will score goals wherever he goes. Mightn't be 51. It mightn't be 51, but he'll score goals wherever he goes. I mean, you just look at him and you, as you say, Malcolm, you think, how am I going to mark him? His power, his pace, his shooting ability, his cleverness, and it's not all brute force, is it? You know, the way he dinked the goalkeeper for the record goal.
Yes.
I mean, that was just delicate.
He's got a very deft touch about him.
Yes, it's not all brute force.
But physically, he's a brute.
Oh, no question. Oh, no question at all. I mean, the way he's built is, you know, he's built like Usain Bolt, who thought he could play football as well until he tried and found he couldn't. But he's built like him and he can run like him. Now, that's a canny start.
Isn't it, Josh?
Definitely is. Looking forward to seeing how he progresses in a black and white shirt one day as well.
Is he going to sign for Juventus, is he?
Hey, classic. Be optimistic, John. One day we'll have Haaland. One day. He seemed to like it up here. It's a cold weather. Derek wanted
He is
to know.
Norwegian. He is Norwegian. He like it up here. The weather.
That's what I mean, yeah, with cold weather. And we've got a boat that goes direct to Norway. See, we're selling it to him already, John. Richard says, does Supermac see Isak as a striker or a winger?
I don't see him, to be honest, as either. He's sort of. I don't want this to sound lame, but he's in the middle of that. He's got the ability to be a winger when he's wide, but a striker when he's in the middle. The one thing that probably he's not keen on is playing as an out and out centre forward with his back to goal. That isn't his game. He wants to be facing the target all of the while, and the way that he moves the ball around the whole of the forward line is absolutely terrific, and so that's the beauty of Wilson and he together. That Wilson will act as that target man quite happily, and as Wilson lays it off, he'll just turn and move forward again into a different position. And Isak will always be there, offering the support and coming from that little deeper position than Wilson. And I really do see them as a fantastic pair together. And so, he's not a winger. He's not an out and out centre forward. He's one. He plays just off of the front and can play the whole of the width of the pitch.
He's a very different. I mean, he's the Swedish centre forward in his other clubs. He played as a 9, but he's a very different player to Wilson. I mean, I feel that Wilson, and this isn't meant as a criticism because it's an accolade, really. Wilson can only play 9. He's a brilliant 9, but he's a 9. You wouldn't play Wilson out wide on the left or out wide on the right. He plays between the posts. And that's the most difficult position to play, and he plays it exceptionally well. Isak is like a modern day footballer, isn't he? He's a bit like Thierry Henry. What was Thierry Henry? Was he a centre forward? Was he a left winger? He often come in off the left with Arsenal. If you think of when he was the wonderful gazelle type player, he often come in off the left hand side to finish. He didn't play orthodox centre forward the old fashioned English bulldog centre forward. That's the sort of guy Alan Shearer was. That's the sort of guy Callum Wilson was, but it wasn't the sort of guy Thierry Henry was, and it's not the sort of guy Isak is. He has the ability to play all over all over the pitch, if you like. He can play where he wants to play or where his manager wants him to play. Wilson can play centre forward. So if you're going to play them together, Wilson's got to be the one through the middle, and then you let Isak float either behind them or on one of the flanks, which is what he did brilliantly in the second half against Southampton. It worked for two reasons. Well, it worked for three reasons. One was allowing Gordon to come off and put him out his misery. The second was having the goal-scoring ability of Wilson on. And the third, Wilson worked because Isak was such an effective outside left. For the want of another word, he wasn't an outside left, but he striking on the left side. It worked. He had his contribution to it as well, Isak, which is why I think, you know, if we were looking to Arsenal, and you play the formation, the tactical formation that Eddie likes and will always play, which is one through the middle and two wide, why can you think of a better person to play wide left in that setup than Isak on Sunday? For me, you could play that, Malcolm.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Derek's put some stats up there for you, Mal, just on the Maxi.
Yeah, I see that, but that's just looking at their overall careers at St James Park. But what the one thing that you have to remember about Murphy was the Steve Bruce, because that's including the Steve Bruce. It's all of their time.
Good old days.
That Murphy was played right back. Richie was left back, if you remember. That Steve Bruce had two wingers playing as fullbacks. I think what you've got to do is just look at the stats under the current manager, nothing previous. Because what went before was an absolute load of codswallop. And so just look from when Eddie Howe became manager and their stats from there.
Okay. Thierry Henry was a cheat. Just ask Shea Given, says George. Yeah, he was. Certainly was. Halfway through the show, and we will go for the ads. A big shout out to all our sponsors. Thanks to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video technology. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you enjoy the show, please hit the little thumb under the video and like the video. Click share to share to your other social media, or subscribe. It's free and we do 7 shows a week. If you want to become a member, you can click join underneath this video. There are different packages to suit all different pockets. And if you want to become a cult member, then put your smartphone over the QR code. It'll take you straight there to the website, which is NUFCmatters.com. If you go in via the website, just click membership pack. What do you get for your money? You get a pen, you get a cup, you get a membership card and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. Don't forget, we are available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And we also support the food bank on this show. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a virtual donation today. We've also got some events coming up over the next couple of months. An evening with Peter Beardsley at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets available from newcastlelegends.com, or go to Voucher and get a 40% discount. Our end of season do is the 27th of May at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are a tenner from NUFCmatters.com. An evening with Gavin Peacock takes place on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets from NUFCmatters.com for that event. And the following night, Gavin will be at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Go to their website for ticket information. We've got a vast range of t-shirts, merchandise and memorabilia available at our website. The Isak t-shirt is doing well. go to nufcmatters.com to buy one today. Okay, back to your questions. Quite a few coming in. Brain teaser from Derek. He wanted to know, Malcolm, would you start Isak and Wilson together against Arsenal?
I wouldn't have any hesitation. The only question mark is Wilson up to playing the full 90 minutes? And that's never disclosed to us at all. That's kept private within the club. So, and I have a feeling it's, that it's to save that hamstring of his, which can be a bit of a bind. And so, and Eddie Howe, I think he makes it very clear that he really does seek to take care of his players, to get the best out of them. He wants them in absolute prime condition and doesn't want to put them at risk. So, yes, they can play together without any shadow of a doubt, and I think it would be a very exciting side if they were to do that. I can see us becoming one hell of an attacking side if those two were put together, with Wilson as the main spearhead and Isak just off him and playing around Wilson, right and left. But then with two wide men who are both good at getting the ball into the box.
I think the thing would be, Malcolm, first of all, Eddie will not disturb, in my opinion, his tactical formation.
That's right.
So any chance of Isak and Wilson playing in the old-fashioned ways, which is in tandem as dual strikers, just wouldn't, like MacDonald and Tudor, like Shearer and Ferdinand, like Barnes, will not happen. But when you say, when the gentleman says, can they play together? The answer is yes, but we don't mean together in the old-fashioned way of twin strikers, but in a front three. They can play within the tactical formation Eddie insists upon, and he won't change that. But what that means is Wilson goes through the middle, Isak lines up a Lloyd Drift, he lines up on the left, and then you decide who's lining up on the right, which is possibly Murphy, but you've got all sorts of people there. You've got Gordon, you've got Almiron, they're queuing up for the wide positions. So, they play together, i.e. in the same side, but not as twin strikers. That will never happen. Wilson goes through the middle, Isak plays left, and whoever you want, probably Murphy's who control at the moment, plays right. And, and Malcolm's absolutely right that Eddie will always try to protect the hamstrings of Wilson, etc., and he probably won't play 90 minutes. But there's a simple answer to that as well. You move Isak from outside left to centre forward and bring one of your 16 wingers in. You've got plenty to choose from, for goodness sake.
Yes.
So you bring him in out there. It doesn't need Isak to be sitting on the subs bench to be able to bring Wilson off. You can bring Wilson off, move Isak to centre forward, and then put a wide man on, a natural wide man on. So you've still got that alternative.
Sure.
But, I would want to go with my best attacking players. And they're the best two goal scorers we've got, Isak and Wilson. I know that Almiron's in between with 11 at the moment, but he's not a regular goal scorer. Isak will be, Wilson is. So I would like them to be on the pitch. And I don't want Isak to be sitting on the bench because I think he's too good to sit on the bench. I don't want to drop Wilson either. So the answer is what we've been talking about in my eyes.
Interesting. Again, it's one which, somebody, it was Nobby Solano in a talking I did with him recently, said, we actually play with 4 or 5 attacking players. Eddie Howe's got the team on such a high press when we push forward, it's almost like playing with multiple forwards.
Sure, because Willock gets into the box.
Yeah.
He becomes another forward when we're attacking in the opposing penalty, opposing half.
Yeah.
So Joe Linton attacks the penalty area.
Yes, he does.
8 goals now, I think, Joe Linton. And the wide men get in as well. Murphy can finish. Almiron finishes, etc., etc. So yes, we do attack with a lot, but I think Wilson and Isak are too good for one of them to be sitting on the subs bench.
Mm.
Ronaldo, we'll talk transfers. Ian says, what do you think of the rumours of the prima donna plonker Ronaldo coming to us? Ian tends to think it's a load of rubbish. I think we'll all think it's a load of rubbish, to be honest. Yeah, go on, lads.
I'd rather pull my teeth out with a pair of pliers. Honestly, I would. I'd rather go on the lawn and pull my teeth out with a pair of pliers. We would be about 10 years too late in getting Ronaldo. He was a fabulous, wonderful, sensational player. That's so far past his sell-by date, it's untrue.
Sure,
Newcastle have left him behind now.
Yeah. And Ronaldo's been at the stage for a very long time where he plays for himself.
Yeah.
Totally for himself.
Yeah.
But also, John, his current circumstance is that he's actually been told to leave, has he not?
Well, we don't know. There's all sorts of rumours. But the bottom line seems to be that he's likely to leave. Because he's also said that his family's not enjoying it, he doesn't understand the language, etc., etc. And of course, he's rich enough to blow the contract and go somewhere else. There's talk that Real Madrid's going to give him an ambassadorial role at the club, which is full-time, his old club, of course, which would be a full-time role because obviously he's not got any intention of becoming a coach or a manager at any stage in the future. So he could do this ambassadorial role, but I don't think bottom line he'll stay in Saudi. But he's not just coming down the other side of the hill, he's already down and getting buried in the ground. It would be too late to sign Messi as well, because Messi is on the wrong side of the hill. He would cost an arm and 25 legs, wages-wise. And
John, did you see the bit about Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, who want him?
Yeah.
And what it actually said in the Daily Mail this morning was that he would be receiving £132 million per year.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ronaldo's money is huge. But, he's not at the stage. He's going to leave Paris Saint-Germain. There's absolutely no question. They can't afford to keep him on. And he's worked himself a little bit because he went over to Saudi when he wasn't allowed to recently and has been suspended by Paris Saint-Germain. And of course, he went over to Saudi. They're paying big money and he might be going over there to play. But, you don't sign yesterday's men. You sign today's men who have got a great tomorrow. You
sign yesterday's men and you start going backwards.
Of course you do. Of course you
do. Man United found that with Ronaldo in the side.
Of course.
Newcastle used to buy people's rejects. Those days have gone. I would say 100%. So there you go, Ian. You got a good answer to your question there. Derek is still looking at stats. He went, you could have a point, Malcolm. Under how Maxi, 998 minutes, 1 goal, 5 assists. Murfinho, 1,147, 4 and 2. But that's after Spurs. He's loving his stats, isn't he? Stats, damn stats. That's what they say.
He scored 3 this season, Murphy, hasn't he?
That was after Spurs, I think he said. I mean, dear me, you get tangled up in stats.
Do you not? Yeah,
you really do. What happens on the pitch is the most important thing, I would say. And Tom Dixon says, do you think Darren Coal will be sent out again on loan next season, or would you try and get him into the squad, Mal?
He's only 18, isn't he?
Only a kid, yeah.
With the transformation of Newcastle this season to where they are now, this is not a time for kids. It really isn't, and his time will come. The lad.
There's absolutely no question of him coming into our squad next season. He's just a Ben. He was only making sub appearances in Australia, for goodness sake. and he's now over here. He's hardly played at all. I think he's had one start for Hearts, not the lad's fault, but he hasn't been gaining the experience that he needed. There is absolutely no chance of him going in Newcastle. And bear in mind, next season we'll be a European Champions League side. There's no chance of him still. He will go out and get experience in the way that Elliot Anderson did, and the way all of the others did that ended up being in the first. You've got a young, inexperienced player, and Elliot Anderson in the squad.
Well, that's right.
And you're not going to have this guy as well. No,
not at all. And when you go in the Champions League, you can't afford to take a chance. You've got to be absolutely rock solid every single game, all of the while.
100%. Messi offered 194 million. It's crazy wages like that. Absolutely bonkers. The lads want to know who you would like to come in on the transfer window. Tommy Wilson, haven't seen you in the chat for a while. Welcome back, mate. He says, "Hi lads, the up and coming transfer window. Who would your dream signing be, Malcolm?" Things have changed now because of the Champions League. You know, two wins and we're there. Results dependent, of course, but you think things are going to take a different turn now, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I'm not going to go into individuals, but what I think is we have got to get in one or two defenders, particularly as centre half. Shah he's just pushing on age a bit, isn't he, at the moment? Although I think he's playing exceptionally well. I think we're short in midfield, both defensively and attacking wise, and maybe another goal scorer. And all of that's going to take money, more money than we can afford to actually spend. And when I say afford to spend, I'm talking about the limitations that have been placed on Newcastle in terms of how much they can spend in a season. What I've just, that sort of rough shopping list that I've just put together there, we'll probably finish up. We can only afford to do half of that, it's a shame. It's very restrictive.
Depending on the money that we'll bring in from the commercial deals and depending on the TV, I mean, we just had the Chronicle giving us the TV figures. I think it was last season's TV figures where we weren't on TV as much, 126.2 million. This year, 22 out of 25 games, I think, so far on TV. Cup run to take into consideration, which took us all the way to Wembley. Sponsorship on the shirts, which we're led to believe will come in sometime before the end of the season. 25 million a year over for the next 3 years. TV coming in from the Amazon TV program, £10 million. Money that they'll save on players, money that they'll get on players going out. I mean, they've already managed to do that deal on Chris Wood. There'll be other players going out and off the wage bill. So it might not be as bad as we, as we anticipate. Financial fair play. Plus, the only, they didn't spend as much in the January window as they could have done. 250 million they've spent as opposed to the 300 million I think they were going to spend. So all in all, they'll have a little war chest, as the Chronicle like to call it, John, to spend. So it might be an interesting summer. Plus, they won't have the pants pulled down this lot. They're not stupid. They're not going to go. They're not going to go for a Harry Kane who's only got a couple of years left at best, at his peak form, banging goals in, and spend 100 million on him. They're probably going to look and unearth another gem, and that's what Dan Ashworth's been brought in for, John. And just get back to Tommy's question: who's your dream? Who would be your dream signings?
Well, it always depends. When you use the word dream signing, you see, you can look at it where you're not looking at cash and you're not looking at age. And to some people, that would mean Harry Kane, and for other people, it would mean Declan Rice, and etc., etc., etc. Now, they might be dream signings, but they aren't going to happen, and that would rock the boat because financially, You see, the other problem there is, take Declan Rice, for example. People say, why don't we go for Declan Rice? Because we need a defensive midfield player. And it would cost 100 million, but in transfer fee, but Eddie Howe would have to smash his wage structure within the club to get, because Declan Rice will be on 3 times as much as Bruno's on. Now, do you do that? No, because Eddie Howe won't have that, and I can understand why. Newcastle are one for all and all for one because they are brothers in arms. If you suddenly bring somebody in that's getting 3 times as much as them, they're going to ask for the same, and you can't afford to give it, or they're going to have a pet lip on and say, wait a minute, we finished 3rd top, we got you into the Champions League, etc., and you're now bringing in players on 3 times the weekly wage I'm on. And so this great camaraderie that the club have got now, which, by the way, if you could bottle it, is magnificent. I mean, yes, Newcastle have got ability. Yes, they've got this, that, and the other. But what they've got more than anybody is that team spirit. You look when we played Spurs. They've got a huge batch of big name players, from Kane to Song to a World Cup winning goalkeeper, etc., etc., etc. But there's flaky as hell because there's no team spirit. There's no camaraderie. The minute they're under the cosh, they run up the white flag. We don't. And you've got to keep that spirit for next season. And therefore, Newcastle will look to buy another Bruno, another Botman. I don't mean position-wise, I mean talent-wise, ability-wise, and the price range-wise. They'll try to buy those type of players that will fit into the current system seamlessly, rather than go out and buy Declan Rice or Harry Kane that would smash everything. They won't do that. They'll sign the type of thing. They might well go and sign.
Sorry, John, but they what Newcastle want and will go and get are the people with their best years ahead of them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Won't sign a Harry Kane, they're more likely to be in the market for somebody like Osherman. You know what I mean? Somebody who's going
absolutely.
to because they started to build the spine of a team, a younger team. You've got Botman there, you've got Bruno there, you've got Isak there, and you're going to want to support those players by bringing in others in a similar age group.
Yes, absolutely,
and in a similar financial bracket, which is important.
I think they'll have to break the wage structure. I think that'll be the thing. I think that
but
eventually.
There's ways of breaking it, Steve. You break it just a little bit. I mean, everybody at Newcastle now know that they're not all on the same wage, but they're all within a certain sphere. You know, if you go and get Declan Rice or Harry Kane, we're just using them as an example. We don't mean it seriously. But you're getting treble the wages that the highest paid guy is on now. Now that produces problems. If it's within, you can top the top wage, which is Bruno, you can top that, but not treble it without causing trouble in the dressing room, I mean. And they'll slowly get to that. In a couple of seasons' time, they will be buying players that have got the wages we're talking about now, because everybody else will have been dragged up towards it, and all the other money, the sponsorship, the European Champions League money, and all that will have come into play. So the progress will be there. But, you know, they're not going to do an Evel Knievel and jump over the Rocky Mountains from the start. They're going to build up, and haven't they done it quickly and well so far? And there are other gems out there like Botman and like Bruno. And I mean, in this country, if you so wished and you wanted to go out and get Madison and all, they wouldn't break the bank or the wage structure, but be a step forward. And so, you know, they may well look at that sort of thing. The names that were mentioned, the positions that were mentioned by Malcolm, which he was absolutely right about. For me, you can add a left back in there. And if that happens to be Kieran Tierney, coming out of Arsenal, he would be within the wage structure, and he's a proper left back, and he's a top left back. They've got 2 good left backs. That's their trouble with the Ukrainian lad. So, you know, they will move forward, but they that is, as Steve said when he said they won't have their pants pulled down. They're not stupid. They're not going to put themselves at risk. They're not going to do what the Chelsea owner's done. Good God. I mean, if there is a book to be written about how not to run a top football club, he should be the author.
Yeah, like I've said to both of you, and I've said on this show, I still believe that there's a bigger story going on behind Chelsea. I would be very surprised if Todd Bowley's actually the owner. But we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah,
but 10 minutes.
He's very much a front man, isn't he?
He's a front man, probably for the same bloke who sold the club, allegedly. I'd still reckon that
the bloke that sold the club was more astute in what he did with the club than whoever's running it now is.
Yes.
Because the transfer policy of who's running it now is embarrassing.
The whole thing stinks to high heaven. It looks to me very much like somebody trying to get rid of money very quickly, and that's the reason they've spent 600 million. But again, it'll all come out in the wash.
And I saw a comment about, is Sterling finished? Sterling, he's gone to Chelsea at totally the wrong time. Nobody's shining at Chelsea. They can't do it at the moment. The whole thing stinks to high heaven, and good players are looking poor players. Did you see them in the week against Arsenal? Chelsea were absolutely shocking. Really, truly shocking.
Well, I mean, I said at the time, Malcolm, if you watch that game and people say, well, Arsenal are now back on form, blah, 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 they're back winning. But we won't lie down the way Chelsea were. We won't be as disorganised as Chelsea. Yeah. Arsenal are facing a different kettle of fish on Sunday than they faced against Chelsea.
It seemed to me as if Chelsea, they weren't even that bothered whether they crossed the halfway line or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different game for Arsenal. Let's look at it. Newcastle United will take on Arsenal this coming Sunday. It is a 4:30 kickoff. It is live on Sky Sports. We affectionately know it as the Malcolm MacDonald Derby. And it is a 4:30 kickoff. It is live on Sky. It is a sellout. War Flags are asking you to take your scarves to the game if you are going to make a wonderful atmosphere with the flags and the scarves, and bring your voices to the game as well. Supermac will be at the Dog and Parrot at 2:00, returning approximately 6:30, 6:45. And it is free entry. Kids welcome. Food and drink are in plentiful supply. And Gibbo will be at Pumphrey's in the big market with Ando. John Anderson, of course, at 2:00. Early for team news, but we know Lascelles won't feature. Still got a calf injury which means he misses out. Sean Longstaff, we're relieved to say it's not broken, the foot, so he could be available.
Really?
He could be available.
News.
And Allan Saint-Maximin,
Malcolm.
He could be back, yeah.
He could be back.
Really?
Yeah, and
wow.
Allan
really good news.
Allan Saint-Maximin's hamstring appears to be miraculously recovering as well in time for another big game live on TV. And he could return as well. As for Arsenal, El Neni is out, as is Tomiyasu. William Saliba is doubtful. And those of you who watched the game against Chelsea the other night will have probably seen the defender Gabriel forced off in the closing stages. News of his availability will come out over the next day or so. On the road, Arsenal have a great record, as I've mentioned on the last couple of days. 11 Premier League wins, drawing 3 games at Southampton, Liverpool and West Ham. And they've lost 3 on the road, Manchester City, Manchester United and Everton, surprisingly. They are also the highest scorers away from home with 33 goals. Referee this weekend is Chris Kavanagh. It's his second game in charge of Newcastle fixture. The other one was the 2-1 victory at Brentford. His most recent appearance at St James's Park was the 1-1 draw with Aston Villa during lockdown. VAR for this weekend's fixture is Andy Madley. And the question that was in the chat from Keith was, would you lads be happy with a draw on Sunday? Keith, not on your Nelly, mate. We're going to win. We are going to win this game, Bonnie lad. And we're going to win it comfortably. 2-0. I'm getting the prediction in before the lads today. Newcastle's going to win this game and they're going to win it well. Malcolm.
And you're sounding very confident about it, Steve, I have to say. The win at Chelsea would have done Arsenal the world of good. They've had a prior to that, they had a pretty lean run. Maybe they're getting themselves back onto form. But now, are we going to come out with a performance like Southampton, or are we going to do a Spurs?
Doesn't matter. We won both games.
We did indeed, John. Yes, yeah, but it needs more than there was against Southampton, against Arsenal, without a shadow of a doubt. It needs a lot more than what we showed against Southampton, and we've really got to be very much alive. It will be interesting to see the tussle in the middle with regards to Odegaard and how Newcastle look to blank him out of the game. Difficult to do. It'll be interesting to see just who goes about doing that job. I think he's an absolutely exceptional player. But mind the room that Chelsea were giving him around the edge of the box. Dear me, Chelsea want shooting for that performance. But against Arsenal, I think Newcastle, they can win, but they have got to be absolutely smack on form for the whole of the 90 minutes. They cannot take 2 minutes off at all in the game.
Okay, Gibbo.
Yeah. Well, you read some very interesting stats out, Steve, when you were setting the scene for the game about Arsenal's away record, which is absolutely superb. Having said that, for goodness sake, we've won 8 out of the last 9. We've scored 13 goals in a week. 13 goals in 1 week, 3 games. So we're not on dodgy form ourselves. I agree completely that this is going to be a different challenge and is going to be a big challenge. But if Gabriel's out, and you are on about him hobbling off in the last game, then both the centre-halves are out. And if Rob Holding plays, mind, he's a walking disaster. He's like Shaw used to be before Eddie Howe got him and turned him into an absolutely top player. I mean, Rob Holding is just the way not to play centre-half. They could have two reserve centre-halves in to look after Wilson and Isak. And that'll be their weakness. If they have that, that's their Achilles heel. And we've all got an Achilles heel somewhere, but I would be looking for us to exploit that. I think it's going to be tough. The interesting thing, and I keep mentioning this, but we have the best goals against record in the whole of the Premier League. We have let in 27. The next is 3 ahead, Manchester City with 30. We've only let in 27. Yet, it is also a fact that in our last 14 Premier League games, we've kept 1 clean sheet. And that was when we beat Manchester United 2-0 up here. The rest, we've won 8 out of 9. And there was only the 1 clean sheet in that. We always let in a goal, which means we've always got to score 2. And therefore, that's exactly the result I'm going to take on Saturday. 2-1 to us. Great stuff.
The Intune Trader says 3-1 as we'll run and sing and war flag them into the ground. Remember the same Southampton side drew 3-3 at Arsenal, so it works both ways, Malcolm. J7 will have Odegaard in his back pocket, says Derek. And Ben White in the centre-half, according to a lot of the Gooner blogs.
All right.
Interesting.
Well, score-wise, I'm going to take Newcastle to win 1-0.
Fantastic.
I can see them stopping Arsenal from scoring.
It's all positive, chaps. We will see where we go next week. Until then, it's thanks from me, thanks from Supermac, thanks from Gibbo. Take care, lads.
Take care,
enjoy what's going to be a great game, I think. Do enjoy.
Keep the faith, boys. Keep the faith. We're almost there.